two.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dan Morrison.
I'm Ellie Morrison, and welcome to Happy Not Satisfied.
This is the show where we talk about finding joy in the process of growth.
We are so excited to have our friend and guest on today, Christina Olivarez. So Christina is the founder and owner of two companies, Social Butterfly Gal and Hustle and Socialize. She's a TEDx speaker, and she has become a media force to be reckoned with in San Antonio and beyond.
Yeah.
Christina, welcome. Thank you for being here. We're so excited to have you.
I am completely thrilled to be here. This is so an amazing setup, by the way, but I'm really excited to chat with y'all.
Well, we want to dive right in and ask you, just straight off the bat, can you tell us the story of the moment you knew you had to start your own business?
Oh my goodness. So I'm going to take you way back to when I was a kid, because I think that really tells you who I am. I was very energetic, very excited about television, very excited about the internet. And I was one of those kids that was immediately on AOL. Like my parents got that AOL, and I was like, let's go. And diving into all the chat rooms. Like I was chatting with NSYNC fans and
Oh my God.
just being like, oh my
The
God.
Wild West of the internet.
Exactly. And so I think from a long time, I just had this passion for community building and passion for broadcasting. And all my life, I just knew I wanted to be on camera. I was ready to go into lifestyle, entertainment reporting. I really dove into that in college and started to just take every single class that I could take, do every internship that I could do. And when I got out of college, I was applying at all these television stations, and I was getting no after no after no after no. And with somebody who has a communications degree, it's like, one, we're often told like there's no money in communications, or there's nothing, no job in that industry, right?
I have a degree, I know.
Exactly. So you hear all these things about just mass comm in general, or just communications. And I was starting to recognize that social media was becoming a forefront in people's minds in terms of business. And this was right around the time where
Like 2010, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
2010, 2011, Facebook had just, started to get business pages, remember, like the thumbs up to like it.
Yep.
And so when I was struggling finding a job in television, I decided, maybe I should just start a blog. Let me go back to the basics of writing, because that's what we knew, right? In terms of writing for the web. And around that time, I was noticing that I was developing a brand, developing this personal brand where people were, just really taking an interest in what I had to say. There wasn't a specific moment where I was like, yeah, I'm going to become a business owner. But I knew that all my life I wanted to be seen and heard. And I felt that these mediums, these channels were my avenue. And I really started to say, you know what, if no one's going to give me a shot, then I got to bet on myself. And that's where I said, all right, my father's an attorney. And so I said, Dad, I have this crazy idea. And he's like, let's get you an LLC. So I had no idea about what these things were, but I knew, all right, this is what's got to happen. And so I got my LLC and just started to understand business really from that aspect. But I always say I became an entrepreneur by accident. It just happened.
Well, you've come to the right podcast and the right hot seat, because we were just, same. Also same in the path.
Yeah.
Like absolute knew that from a kid that I wanted to be seen and heard, whether that was performing or whether that was broadcasting. I didn't know which one it would be. And I kind of wanted to pursue both and have, like in a weird kitchen soup version of like putting all the ingredients together. But we were just talking this morning to high school students about forging your own path and using those moments of rejection and that over and over and over again when you're trying to be put in a box, or society's trying to put you in a box, or life and career trying to put you in a box, and you're like, nope, I am not in a box.
Yeah.
Like, I am not to be contained.
Yeah.
And so we were just talking about this morning, and Dan's had his version of that, and rejection in so many different ways. And like, we started this podcast. We're starting, we have our own business, and it's like becoming entrepreneurs by accident because you don't fit all these other categories and boxes that everybody else is trying to put you in. So totally relate. And, like, I'm super curious. You've developed such a strong brand, such a strong presence online, in particular, but you're everywhere. I mean, whether it's online or, in traditional media and outlets and all of that. But what I love about your journey and how you have evolved is, let's talk about a little bit about the background of Social Butterfly Gal. You first started with helping other people manage their social media.
I did.
And how has that evolved to what you're doing now? Because it's such a cool trajectory.
It's wild to see that kind of career pivot, because immediately when I got started in just starting Social Butterfly Gal, I was recognizing, okay, these businesses really need help with social media. They had no idea. They've never done any marketing in this aspect. It's always been traditional. And so I was managing Fiesta San Antonio's social media. I was managing Urban Bricks Pizza. I did a couple of things for Fashion Week back in the day. And around that time, it was, all right, let's help you build your Facebook, your Twitter, or X now, your Instagram presence, right? But every time that I was managing social media, specifically for women-owned businesses, I was recognizing that a lot of these women, it was deeper than just managing the social media. There was a lot of hesitation when it came to creating content. And as we started seeing the pivot from just photos and, images, graphics to more video, I was really noticing like, oh, women are having a very tough time understanding how to put themselves out there in a way that is very different from what they were told to do as a young person, right? And so as much as I loved managing social media, what a lot of people don't understand is that it is a lot of work.
It's so much work.
It is so much work. And it is not valued. I mean, I would have to advocate for myself. I was making all of these incredible analytics, reaching millions of people from the strategies that I was having and the frameworks that I was creating. And I had to continue to advocate for why people need social media. Why does your business need it? And so during the pandemic, I think we all just kind of felt social media was really doom and gloom.
Yes.
And for me, my mental health was really suffering during being on those, on the platforms almost every day. Yep. And I was recognizing during that time, I started pivoting more to consulting. But when I was consulting, that's when I realized, oh, no matter how much strategy I give you, it's not going to work unless there's some form of mindset to it. There's deeper level of understanding confidence and understanding imposter syndrome and understanding perfectionism. And that's when I started to really pivot to coaching. Because coaching is very different than consulting. You're helping somebody get to point A to point B, but they are 100% responsible for their results. I could give them the strategy, I can tell them what to do, but they have to take ownership. And so it was getting deeper into, okay, why is there some perfectionism around this topic? Being comfortable with being seen and being heard, going on camera. And so I find more passion and just more fulfillment in coaching somebody and seeing that light bulb moment of, wow, I realize that the reason why I'm not being on camera is because of failure or not being able to let go of my perfectionism. And I think that for me has been more just fulfilling than managing social media accounts, because managing just took a lot of energy from me. Whereas coaching, I'm really working one-on-one or I'm working in a group setting. And it's just been just so beautiful to see even how social media has evolved. It's been so beautiful to see that transition as well in my brand and in the way, I'm working with people nowadays.
That's super interesting. So many things I want to ask you about from that, but specifically about mindset. And obviously you do coaching. I was a teacher for a long time. There's a lot of overlap there. I was essentially a coach, but in band, right? One thing in particular I want to ask you about, you mentioned imposter syndrome, and I think about that a lot, and not necessarily just like surface face value of like, oh, I don't think I can do this, and I question myself, and that's bad. Like, I kind of think imposter syndrome in a way can drive us to like better outcomes if we channel it in the right way. So I'm curious to kind of hear your take on that and how you talk about it with your coaching clients.
Yeah, there was 2 moments in my entrepreneurial trajectory that I felt I had major imposter syndrome. The first one was just networking and getting myself out there.
Yeah.
I'm not originally from San Antonio. I'm from the Rio Grande Valley, but going into places where you are often the only is the most intimidating thing to be, especially if you're a youngster, right? Often when I started my business, I was only 24. So I always heard the thing of you got to pay your dues, you know, and I really just felt I would walk in, I make this joke all the time, but I still have my first car. It's a 2007 Ford Fusion. And I'm going to these places where there are luxury cars. Right. And I'm over here in my vehicle blasting like Daddy Yankee and just being like, do I even belong here? You know, it's those things. And walking into rooms and seeing older people and again, having to advocate for yourself. The second moment was when I got asked to do a TEDx talk, which was during the pandemic. And around that time, I had always wanted to do a TEDx talk. That was a bucket list goal. My college friend actually gave a TEDx talk. She's an anchor in Florida. And so she had the opportunity to give one. And I would watch it on YouTube and be like, oh my God, I wish I could do that. And then I got asked to do it. And what a lot of people don't know is I actually turned it down. I didn't want to do it. I was really scared. I just didn't believe this is something I needed to do. And it was so different because it was 2020, which meant that I would have to pre-record this TEDx talk in a room with very little people, no audience. Like TEDx talks, there's an audience and you play to the crowd. And I just remember when I got asked to do it, I didn't apply. So in my head, I was like, why? And my speaker coach said, you are the right person for this talk. You belong on that stage to deliver it. And it's something that took me a while to really understand, like, why am I this person? But it was that moment of believing in myself and believing in my story and my voice. And I always have this mantra of like, your story matters. You know, you being able to tell your story opens up the gates for other people to tell their story and just ushers in for people to take up space. And I feel like that's really what I focus on in my coaching. This notion of visibility and being seen and heard in a way that for a lot of minority businesswomen were told at such a young age to cállate, you know, don't speak up, very dominate. Like I think about all of the women, you know, before me who never had the opportunity to be on podcasts,
right,
you know, to be on stages. And so I really focus a lot in my coaching of where is this coming from and having this belief mantra of this is why your voice matters. You do have things to say. People want to hear what you have to say and letting go, breaking down those walls, because the more we put our voices out there, the better it just becomes for future generations. Mm-hmm. And so I really see that and believe that. And even there are times when I still go to networking events, you know, like I did the crazy thing. I bought a ticket last minute to a conference in LA, didn't know anybody. I said, I need to be in that room. I need to be in that room. And I was so nervous because all these people know each other because they're in LA. And I'm just here like, come to Texas. You know, I'm the Texan. And I just think like putting yourself in uncomfortable situations is actually kind of what fuels, right? And lets go of the imposter syndrome. And I think that's what my whole entire brand has been about as well.
Yeah, I love that. And what's really resonating with me in this particular moment in my life is, taking up space. You deserve to take up space.
Yes.
And I think there's something that like I guess I've always had some of these underlying things, beliefs in a belief system that I'm also from San Antonio. I have part Mexican, Italian, like these very like we have similar familial cultures and programming that comes from that.
Yeah.
And what I'm working through right now is just the transition of becoming a mother has not motherhood itself, but a life transition brings certain things up that you maybe thought or you didn't realize were issues that you needed to deal with. But I find that I have been in a period of, and it happened in 2020 also, but I just somehow like skirted around it and took a minute and like, I don't know, I didn't address it. But now I've really been working on deeply, like, why do you feel that you don't deserve to take up space? What is going on right now? Why? And so I think that I am finally making some progress with like, but it does. It affects you majorly with, I'm not even going to post. I'm not even going to say anything at all. I'm so stuck. I don't know what to say. And as a business owner, that's detrimental to the growth of your business.
Yes.
And so how, if you are building a brand, if you're establishing a brand, if you have, goals or dreams or whatever, and you just have to move forward, you do need to kind of be like, do the work to unblock.
Yes.
Because you are representing, I keep telling myself over and over again, because I have a lot of these things that come up for me are like, don't be selfish, don't be selfish, don't be selfish, right? Or self-centered.
Yes.
And posting can sometimes feel that way. And so I've just kind of shut it off, especially now that I'm a mother and I'm so focused on, being there and present for my child. But in this sort of journey that I've been working on, it's like, okay, the most selfless thing you can do is to unblock, do the work, like get out there with a voice that, your truth and your energy so that you can illuminate other people's stories with your platforms. And so that's kind of what I'm in the middle of right now. And I'm, just fascinated by how you have grown to help women get here, and learn this and trying to kind of do that work that I think is so important. And I think, now that brings me to, let's talk about Hustle and Socialize, because I remember the very first Hustle and Socialize. I was there. I was a panel. Yes, I was a panel moderator, and I was so excited and humbled by the invitation to do that. That was 2017.
2018.
Just for anyone that doesn't know what that is.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
So can you explain and share what Hustle and Socialize is?
Hustle and Socialize is a conference and community here in San Antonio it's the first place where women can connect, can be unapologetically visible, and to grow profitable businesses. So we have an annual conference every June, and then we have quarterly events that support the conference. But it really is a space, a brave and safe space where women can be with each other, can let down their guard and be vulnerable about entrepreneurship and building a business, but then also do what I love to call both the hustle and the socialize, where we are focusing on building our business in the hustle component. And on the socialize, we're not just socializing and networking, but we're also putting our health first. We're putting our wellness first. We are understanding how to rest as busy women that we are. And it has been the most incredible business, I feel, that I could ever have created. And I'm learning so much about myself through this. And it has gone through a crazy transition since 2018 when we first had it. And I feel like it's funny, they're both sisters, like SBG and Hustle and Socialize. Now they're under the same umbrella. Now they are, they're sisters, but I feel like and I don't have kids yet, but I feel like when I do, I'm going to understand it a little bit more. But I feel like there's one kid where, okay, she's good, she's great. And then there's the other one where it's like, oh man, you're a lot. And I feel like sometimes Hustle and Socialize is that kid because I really have to feed it. And honestly, I feel I've learned so much about myself through creating this platform, creating this space. And every time I feel like I'm done, I'm tired, I don't want to do this anymore, I meet somebody who has gone through Hustle and Socialize, and that's what fuels me to continue this and to make it bigger and to put San Antonio on the map.
Yes.
And so, yeah, that's a little bit of Hustle and Socialize.
So I wanted to, okay, so I know that Hustle and Socialize has gone through an evolution and a journey. Sticking with the mindset though, as you have built and grown your companies, now 2 that you have, we like to talk a lot about overcoming this I'll be happy once and you know, Dan, I think you can speak a lot more to it, but we wanted to get your feedback, Christina, about how you have either struggled with this or work to overcome it on a day-to-day basis. Like, I'll be happy once I get this many clients for SBG, or have this many signups for Hustle and Socialize conference. Like, can you talk a little bit about?
I can, because I struggle with this on a daily basis, which is why I love this
Yeah.
mantra so much. So I have the should problem. I should be here by now. I should be doing XYZ. I should have. And I feel like that has actually hurt and stunted my growth.
Yeah.
Because of the fact that I'm not in the present moment, and I'm not, and I have a therapist, and I have a business coach, and I have a business advisor, and they all kind of say the same things. Gratitude. Gratitude, 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 gratitude.
I know. I we're soulmates on this.
It's so
It shouldn't
frustrating.
be hard, but it is hard. I feel like. Yeah.
And so I feel like it's easy to compare yourself, especially with women's organizations or conferences that are very similar, are very, aligned. And you see these, you see them and you're like, man, why aren't we there yet? Why is this a struggle? And I feel like I've really had to do a lot of internal reflection of understanding this is my journey. This is where I'm at right now. And really taking a step back and being like, okay, this is why I'm grateful for XYZ. And I'm not going to lie, I've been to other conferences that are nationally owned. And after experiencing their conferences, it really put into perspective of, oh, really the only things that are different is that they have money.
Yes.
That's it.
Yes.
They have money and they have people.
Scale.
And it's like the only way they have people is because they have money, right? The content is pretty on par. Our speakers here are pretty on par. And that really also put that into perspective, because I think, we all have this fantasy of like, I want to scale, I want to grow, I want to do XYZ. But with more scaling comes more problems.
Yes.
And I have to also remember that in that aspect, especially as I've continued to grow. And also one thing that really hurt me the most is letting other people's decisions or letting other people's visions cloud my own vision.
Oh, preach.
And
I'm in recovery.
Oh my gosh. So in 2021, 22, my business partner, who's my best friend, we've been best friends since we were 10 years old. We're still best friends. But she came to me saying, I want to run for Congress. And this was a dream. I mean, this was when we were 10 years old, that's what she wanted to do.
Vision.
That's her vision.
Yeah.
And so for me as a best friend, it was like, yes, about time.
Yeah.
As a business partner, it's like, oh crap, this is our business.
Yeah.
And so in 2022, I was really trying to figure out what was going to happen. And I couldn't lean on myself. I couldn't trust myself. There was so many decisions where I just did not believe in my own capabilities. And so I would ask, colleagues and friends like, well, what do I do here? And what do I do? What do you think? And then it was literally putting too many cooks in the kitchen.
Yes.
To the point where around the end of the year, I didn't recognize what hustle and socialize was. And then I started questioning it. Like, is it needed? Do we, what does this look like if I decide not to? Because there was a vision where it's like, well, she's leaving the company. I don't think I could take this on. Mm-hmm. And I did have to have a moment where I had to burn it all down.
Yeah.
I had to burn it to the ground. And I said, I'm starting from scratch. And, I ended up buying her out and I took 100% control of it. And I had to let go of the shoulda, coulda, wouldas, because that was our 5th year. Yeah. That was our 5th. So visions of 5th year are like, oh my God, we should be having this by now. And really it was like, no, I have to take it back to the basics. So that's what I did. I took it back to what it was in 2018. I said, we're not doing a multiple day conference. We're going to have a 1-day conference and we're just going to rebuild. And I'll never forget. This is like literally the universe, like throwing wrenches at you, but no fault of its own. The night before the conference in 2023, the air condition in our venue busted.
Oh my God.
So here we are in the middle of the summer
in San Antonio.
In San Antonio, 100.
It's hot.
It's hot. And that was when my leadership skills were tested.
Yeah.
Because it was like, all right, girl, here's your moment.
Here's some problems to solve in a very short amount of time.
Exactly. And, thankfully with the small team that I had and just the people who rallied around it, I was able to step up on stage and really lead in the way that I was being called to lead that last year and a half. And that put it into huge perspective for me because it's happy, not satisfied, right? Like, am I happy? Yeah. Am I happy with this?
Yeah.
Knowing that, okay, here we are in the middle of summer and the AC busted. And so what I normally do is, all right, if it's going to be hot, we're going to turn up the heat. So I said, we're going to put, my energy is just going to go up.
Yep.
And we're going to put the music on. And there I was down the aisle dancing to J-Lo's Let's Get Loud and making sure every speaker had what they needed and making sure the experience was great for our attendees. And I kid you not, our feedback was incredible. It was incredible despite the AC. And everybody put that, despite the AC, but it was that moment where it's like, am I happy with this? Mm-hmm. Right? Am I satisfied with this? And of course, there's parts of me that was like, man, this should have happened. But when I think about what happened from 2021 to get me to that moment, I think about like, yeah, that was a moment. Now, of course, now I'm like, all right, 2024, let's really make it bigger and better. Yeah. But I think that at that moment, that's when I realized, everything was out of my control. But the only thing I can control is my own way of being and my leadership. And that moment was a true lesson in happy, not satisfied.
Yeah.
Really.
No, I love that. And talking about like the problem of should or however you phrased it was so great. But I have like almost an even further issue on that front, and I'd be interested if you can relate. It's like it's not just, I feel like I should be here. Sometimes I'm at or beyond what I thought before I should be, and I get there or past it, but when I'm in it, I'm still like, well, no, but now I should have been even further, even though it's not even possible because I'm already past what I was expecting of myself.
Yeah.
It's a sickness. I don't know.
It is. Yeah, it's like the TEDx talk, right? Like, when that moment happened, that's every speaker's dream.
Yeah.
And I want to give another one, shout out. But it was that moment where it was very different than what I thought it was going to be because we were in the pandemic.
Well, yes. And I think so often the things that we are hoping for and dreaming for and looking for in our lives, when they happen, always feel different. Yeah. And so sometimes feel like a letdown because you have, that's sort of, to me, the essence of this I'll be happy once I think.
Yes.
Right.
Because you put all of your eggs into the basket of once I accomplish this thing, then I'll be happy. And then you accomplish the thing and you realize this didn't necessarily make me happy because that's not how you find happiness.
Right.
And then you talk about happy, not satisfied. That's why I try to frame it like that for my own self and for my students when I was teaching, for people that I talk to now. It's like, you find joy in the process of growth. Yeah. You're not trying to find joy in some imaginary arrival point because the arrival point will always feel like a letdown.
Yes.
And I remember so many times in my life where I was very fortunate to accomplish a goal. Like, and I set out to do something and I did it, and it was just awesome. And like, I don't mean to undermine how grateful I was for that.
Yeah.
But then it wouldn't like sustain this joy inside of me that's just like lasting to this day.
Yeah.
And it's like this big myth and a weird human nature thing that we all have to overcome. Like, is this something, I guess, again, going back to your coaching, do you ever talk about this with people you work with, or do your coaches talk about it to you? Like, where does that lie for you?
My coach really talks a lot about that to me. And we have this thing where we are constantly doing like new beliefs. Like, how do we, with a limiting belief, how do we kind of unravel that and create something different? And I remember for me specifically, like, there was a moment in one of my clients where she had a big breakthrough, and it was not really related to social media, but it was related to everything that she was doing. And I think she thought that if she was able to post a specific amount of time, she would feel a certain way about it because she accomplished the goal.
Right.
But then she realized that, in the process of that, she realized like she doesn't have the amount of time to be doing all that. And it felt kind of arbitrary in a way, because she was like, well, now that's, even though I got to that point of like being able to post, it's still not satisfying for me because I still have all these other things to do.
Yeah.
And I think for me, one of the things that I've learned is being able to just break down like, where's the limiting beliefs that are coming into my head, because I still have a lot of them that I'm like trying to get over. But also when it comes to if I'm going to get to that point, what that joy feels like, it's like being joyful now.
Yes.
And being, oh my gosh, like being grateful now. And so my therapist will disrupt my day by sending me a voice memo, and she'll say, all right, gratitude countdown, go.
Yeah.
Which is I have to send her a voice memo back. Like, I literally have to put down whatever I'm doing and send her a voice memo back of 10 things that I'm grateful for in this moment. And like, kind of like not work related, like just randomly, like, I had coffee today, right? Or
Always grateful for
like,
that.
like, or I have a roof over my head, like some of these things that we take for granted. And I think that has helped me a lot.
Does it help? Yeah.
Yeah, it helps me a lot, because I remember the simple act of like, I was able to go and buy XYZ, right? And it was just those little things. Or when we had the freeze.
Yes.
So lucky that our place did not lose power or water. And it's those things that I feel like has disrupted my thinking, but it's still, I remember when I first hit my very first 10K month, it was like a goal where that's what I wanted. And when it actually happened, I didn't really feel any different.
Of course. Yeah.
Because I also was so in the moment of, all right, how are my clients doing? And it was like, I remember looking in my QuickBooks being like, oh yeah, that happened. Yeah. And it was like, that was a thing that I had been striving for. And when it happened, it didn't feel any different. Yeah. And so I feel like, it's really weird. And I try to stay in the now. I try to be like, all right, I am a badass now, not until I have XYZ, or even, just in everyday life. I feel like I try really hard to stay in that moment and thinking like, hey, right now is who I need to be in order to get to the next level or whatever I'm striving for.
Yeah. That leads me to ask you about sort of wellness and habits and things like that, because I feel like it's talked about a lot. Like, I need to be in the moment. And like all the self-help people say that, whoever on social media says that. I hear it all the time. Right. Yeah. And then I'm like, well, but how? Like that, I get it. Okay. Like, I'm trying, but I'm still thinking about like tomorrow and next month and how I need to do the next thing and all these ambitions and goals. Like, I'm trying to be in the moment, but it's hard. So my question, because I talk about this a lot and I think about it a lot with my own self, like without having gone through this like wellness transformation that I went through like 4 or 5 years ago now, I don't know what would be happening in my life. I would be really struggling. Do you think about wellness? Do you have routines? Do you feel like that helps you stay in the moment?
100%.
Okay.
So I have the hardest time not doing anything.
We
cannot
are
sit.
kindred. We are
cannot
kindred.
sit down.
You guys.
Holidays and like vacation, it's hard.
Yep.
Like I remember on our honeymoon in Jamaica.
Straight up.
God, we can talk about
We
that.
had a like 10-day, right? And I was like, by
One
day
day,
4.
day 2, I'm like,
Yeah,
done.
I was like,
done.
all right. So one thing that has really helped me is putting my phone on Do Not Disturb
Yes.
at a certain hour.
Yep.
Because pandemic, I mean, I was like glued to that phone. And
So
it's
bad.
so bad.
Yeah.
So
I'm like, I shouldn't be looking at my phone.
Right.
I shouldn't be
literally
looking at my
say
phone.
it. He'll be like saying it at the kitchen island, be like,
Yeah.
I shouldn't be looking at this. I'm like, well,
Yeah.
then put it down.
Yeah.
And I knew it was toxic for me
Yeah.
because there I was at 6:15 in the morning
Yep.
looking at my phone, and it was answering client messages.
Yeah.
And I was like, why?
Yeah.
So I started to put my phone on Do Not Disturb during the pandemic, starting from 8:30 p.m. to 8:30 a.m. And I focus my mornings. So I really started to get into meditation. I have the Calm app, and I do the daily Calm every morning,
Yep.
do the reflection. And I'm a huge journaler. Maybe that's like writing. I feel like the process of documenting, and not only like being able to document, but to go back and see where you were at a
Yes.
point, or like what thoughts were you thinking about at that point. And so I spend a good hour in my morning. So my husband is huge in health and wellness. And so he works out, and he started waking up at 5. And so I was like, oh, maybe I should wake up at 5. So I started to do it too. He'll go run, he'll do his things, and I go to the living room and do a 30-minute Pilates routine. Simple YouTube, not spend it. It's just a YouTube video. And I even message the woman on Instagram, like, you saved my life, and like, you've changed my life, So I'll do a Pilates routine, and then I'll just go journal and really reflect and meditate. I feel like that in the last 3-4 years, gosh, has made such a huge difference in my life. Especially like getting my health and fitness into play, like working out.
Yeah.
I never really understood how movement can really factor in when you are stressed.
Yes.
And really, I mean, there was 2022 when I was going through the acquisition of Hustle and Socialize, there was moments where I was waking up in the middle of the night just crying because I just didn't know what was going to happen. Or, even during the pandemic, my dad caught COVID and was in the hospital during one of the most craziest moments, and I couldn't do anything about it. I couldn't go home.
Yeah.
And so it was in those moments where I was told, like, you need to move, you need to get out, you need to have that, just getting yourself to a place where you're not thinking about work. And that has helped me. I feel like it's still a struggle. Like, it's never not.
That's the thing about all of this. It's like you don't solve it. Just like no achievement makes you happy.
Right.
These things don't just go away after you hit some threshold. Right. You can't beat the video game.
You can't.
It doesn't.
But I'm able now to be aware of, all right, where
100%.
is my, like, why is this thought coming into my head?
Yes.
And okay, if like the other day I did it, I was feeling a little just jittery when it comes to, we're getting into the Hustle and Socialize conference. We're starting to really kind of beef up. And this year it's going to be bigger. Yeah. Right. And with bigger comes bigger decisions. And so I was starting to feel a certain way, and I caught it. And so then I was like, all right, let's journal this out.
That's
key.
amazing.
That's
huge when that happens.
It's key.
Yeah.
And so I feel like
self-awareness.
that is kind of what I'm looking for. And then I think about too, like becoming a mom, right? Like it's like this thing of like, all right, what's that going to look like for me? And I really feel like I'm so proud that I've been able to discovered this and have these habits, because I know it's going to be very important going into motherhood.
Exactly. Well, and we just I just dumped this on you in the coffee shop the other day when we ran into each other but what you said is right. If you establish this for yourself before you go into it, then like me, what I have gone through the past, I would say 15 months is like, oh, I've been here before.
Yeah.
When I feel bad, when I have this stuckness, or when I'm anxious, or when I'm starting to feel angry at the world, I've been here. I've solved this.
Yes.
I know that it's not a one solve thing, but it's get back to your routines, get back to your wellness. In the past 2 months, I have now been in therapy. I have, starting my wellness again, back to my fully green focused diet, walking, doing all these things. Childcare helps, school helps, it's like, how do I get myself literally putting a chair in my closet? Literally putting a chair in my closet. I was like, I need space. But it's the space to be able to have an inner life. And I think what you've established is talking about, I created an inner life. And that's what you've done. And like, for me, I did it years ago when we were getting married, when we were engaged. And I felt like that was my big first low point of like, you've got to change something. You're not well. And so what that started for me was the journaling and the wellness and the fitness and all this stuff. But then becoming a mother, for me, you're so focused on your child and you're doting and you're doing all these things, and like you have added responsibilities. With those added responsibilities that are acute in the moment, need to be like your attention here now. It's very difficult to get out of that and into like the headspace. So I put a chair in my closet like a month ago, and I go in there early in the morning and late at night. And it gives me like,
sometimes I go in there too. It's nice.
He meditates there.
It's nice.
Because he wakes up at 4 a.m. And I wake up not as early anymore, but sometimes I'll stay up maybe like 10, 11, and then I'm trying to get up at like 5:36 just to have the bookend, because it's about creating the Zen time for yourself to be within your thoughts so that you can then identify like what is really coming up here, like what is actually happening. Because oftentimes, and I've learned in the past year and a half of all this shift, is like things are presenting as one way, but the root of the issue is not always
it's funny
that.
how that happens.
And that's why I needed to not be on my phone. Because I immediately, first thing in the morning, was like, let's get on Twitter, let's get on Facebook. And now you're like reading other people's things and seeing other people's things. And then you're not able to really have that moment for yourself. And so when I started to really like, all right, we're going to put my phone on Do Not Disturb, and we're not getting on it until we are sitting down. It changed my life because now I'm focused for a good solid 2 hours in the morning. I'm just focused on myself and what do I need to do today? And then I'm listening to a good podcast and it's changed the way I think and the way I see the things. And I 100% recommend putting that phone on Do Not Disturb.
One follow-up to that, because someone could say like, oh, but you make your own schedule. You have business, so you have the privilege and all that to have those hours in the morning, which in some sense is true. But I firmly believe that there is a way to find time for yourself and prioritize your health, your mental well-being, almost no matter what. I mean, when I first had this whole shift, for me, it was in 2019. I was the head band director at Reagan. There were many weeks in the year where I was working 100 hours, 7 days a week, from very early in the morning to very late at night. Or on some weekends, we'd have a football game. I would get home at midnight. We'd be back at the school at 5 a.m. for getting on the buses to go to Houston. The competition ended at 1 a.m. And then we drove back from Houston. And then we had a critique with the judges the next day on Sunday before having to come back on Monday to start the whole thing again. So I'm only saying that not because like, look at me, I'm so busy. I was really busy, but that's not the point. The point is, I still woke up early every day. I worked out every single day when I was getting this all figured out. I prioritized. I made smart decisions with what I was eating. I developed these self-discipline things where I could resist certain temptations, and then that became habit, and then that was just like how I lived my life. And I'm saying all this because it could be easy to see you, who's 10 years into a career as an entrepreneur and crushing it and all these things. First of all, it didn't start like that.
No, it did not.
You had to build your way through, and you're going to continue to do that, I'm sure. But I just think that there is such it's like an epidemic of a lack of wellness in people. And I was guilty of living that lifestyle, and I was way less just aware and happy and all these things before that. And so I'm always on a crusade to talk about wellness. And I ask as soon as I can like get an inkling that, okay, this person does this, and I'm going to talk about it, because I would say almost every person we've talked to, that's true of. And I don't think it's a coincidence that those people are successful and they're more well-adjusted and they're finding purpose and meaning in life. I think it all ties back to just taking care of yourself.
It does. But the one thing I do want to say is that I think for me, I also established these routines for myself when I was in a full-time structured job. And the reason that I did was because I got to the point where I felt like I cannot go on another day without doing something to fix this. Like I cannot feel this bad anymore for one more day. And until you get to that point, like, you know, you're not going to do the drastic stuff that needs to be done in the beginning to get you kick-started onto these routines. So that is the one thing. Like, if you are desperate enough and if you don't feel well, like, there will come a point where you're like, I can't go on another day and I will do whatever it takes. I will stop drinking. I will stop eating sugar. I will stop, you know, all the stuff. Then once you get to the point where even in just a month, you feel the difference in your body.
You're like, with it just long enough. You're like, oh yeah.
You're like, I never want to not feel this way again. Right. You know, and then it becomes survival and necessity. And you're like, I want to wake up at 5. And Dan's like, 4 a.m. Like, I cannot wait to go to sleep at 7:30 p.m. so that I can wake up at 4 a.m. and have my day to myself.
I am a good sleeper. I'm very fortunate to be a good sleeper, but like, I wish I didn't have to sleep. I just feel like I just
really weird enough.
I'm like, I wake up in the middle of the night. I'm like, please be time to wake up. And then I go back to sleep. Like, I want to get to my day, and I did not used to be that way.
The opposite of that. You were literally like, you know, and you would like foggy roll out of bed like 5 minutes before you had to leave. And I was up like pouring my coffee, like, good morning. It's like, time. You know, with my top knot, like having journaled. And then it changed. But you had to be the one to be like, okay, I've got to change something.
And the way I started with that was this other mantra that was like 10 minutes is better than none.
Absolutely. Yes.
And so her name is Jessica Vallant. You should look her up on YouTube. I've discovered her Pilates routines, and that was what she would say, 10 minutes is better than none. And it was this thing that carried me through because I had just said, all right, we're going to start this. And I just grabbed my yoga mats and was like, we're going to do it. And then it kind of carried me through to where instead of 10 minutes, it was starting to get to 15 minutes and then 20 and then 30. And that on the days, like even today, you know, we just got back from our hometown. We got in a little late and I could have easily stayed in bed. But I said, no, it's the first day of the month. Let's get it going. And it was like, all right, 10 minutes is better than none. I did 30 this morning, but that thing really helped. It's like, if I could scroll on social media for more than 10 minutes,
right?
I can at least get a workout in.
That. I want to talk about, okay, so now pivoting. I want to talk about pivoting. See what I did there? I didn't realize I was gonna do that. But when you have had these points of, you know, every business owner, like when you set out and you have the pie in the sky goal, there is so much change that happens that you're navigating. And what I'm interested in, especially with you and where I have found personal struggle with is in these moments of pivot or burning it to the ground to have to reform it again, you know, when you're going through all of these trials with a business, you are coaching other people about how to take up space, how to show up, how to be in your, you know, be visible. Are there times when you're like, I don't even know what's next? How do I make a video today? How do I show up? Like, can you talk a little bit about your personal struggle with that?
100%. Yeah. Oh my goodness. So I've had to pivot a lot. And I feel like now I'm at this moment where I am really understanding what is making me really great money. What are things that I can let go. Maybe I'll do it once a quarter, or even just with the conference, like understanding the number aspect of it. But I do feel specifically in 2021, like 2021 pandemic time, 21, 22, weird. Gosh, it was, that's where the biggest pivots happened. And there was that moment where I knew I had to let go of a client. And it was really hard because I'm not going to lie, they were about 85% of my revenue.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And that's I had let go because they were, you know, essentially paying the bills.
Right.
I kind of let go this notion of putting myself out there. And because I was like, oh, these, you know, it was stable. They were my contract client, but I knew that I needed to let it go. It was not serving me. And it was really interesting how it wasn't like, I could already tell it wasn't serving me, but also this is where the pivot was happening for Hustle and Socialize. And there was some calling, like I felt it. I was like, something is on the horizon. I don't know what it is, but I know if I continue to do this, I'm not gonna be able to have my focus in there. And it was this moment where I really had to look at myself and really be like, this is not serving me and I don't know what's gonna happen. And I'll never forget, the person that I was working with, she kind of was giving me an inkling like, hey, we're going to make some cuts and I want you to be the one to do it before they do it to you. And so she asked me, will your business survive? And I really didn't know how to answer that.
Yeah.
And I said, yes, yes. And I was just like, okay. And in that moment, I didn't know if it was going to survive, but I knew I had to be visible even though I didn't know what was going to happen. And so immediately when I decided, all right, I'm going to let go of this contract, I did it and I had no backup plan. I had nothing. I was like, well, right now Hustle and Socialize is now my revenue and this thing. And so I had to just lean on that visibility factor, even though in the behind the scenes, I was freaking the heck out.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. And I think sometimes it's this notion of how vulnerable do we get on social media, but also recognizing that you are a brand and you are a business. And so, yes, I want to get vulnerable and yes, I want to share, but I also know there's a lot of people watching.
Right.
And they're watching your next move and they're watching how you be a leader. And so if I go on social media and share, oh my God, I'm in this, I'm in this whatever phase, I knew that would hurt me.
Yeah.
So it was like, okay, dealing with it privately. And that's why I'm always on the camp of sharing the scar and not from the wound. Brene Brown says that, where when you're in the thick of it, you handle it privately and it's okay. I think sometimes social media, we tend to just feel like we need to trauma dump on social media at all times when we're going through it.
Yeah.
And it's like, a lot of people, when I was going through letting go my last social media client, they had no idea. They were like, oh, I thought you were doing this. No, I'm actually pivoting to coaching, right? This is what I'm doing. Or with Hustle and Socialize, a lot of people didn't know that my business partner left. And it wasn't until I actually said, oh, rebrand time.
Yeah.
And I had to do that privately.
Yeah.
And so I feel like sometimes it is hard to show up, but I see where that was one pivot, like when we made the decision to cancel the 2022 conference.
Yes.
And I had to show up the next day at Startup Week, at Frost Tower and be around my colleagues who I just emailed saying, hey, this is not going to happen. They're asking what's going on. And it's those things where you have to understand how to be the effective leader, how to not be this person that's crying on social media. But then when you're actually kind of overcoming it, then that's where you could share those stories because then you've learned the lesson.
Yes.
Right.
And I feel like that's
total agreement.
I love
I love that.
And I don't think it's talked about enough. I think if anything, it's like, oh, you should be so open and honest all the time. And like, there's something to that, but there's a time and a place. And you have to protect your own self and who you're sharing with and when and how. And I really admire that approach.
Because it was, I feel even too, like, I feel like so far in the last decade, I've done everything from influencer marketing to managing influencer events to managing social media, consulting. I pivoted a lot because I was recognizing like, oh, this is not working. Boom, let's try something else.
Yeah.
All right, this is working. Great. Like for a while, social media management was working.
Yeah.
And then I feel like during the pandemic, that's when I really kind of saw, all right, if I talk to these people, what is there privacy there? Is there trust? Is there, so really that's why I really closed my circle to where it's like, okay, if I'm going to talk to someone, it's my therapist.
Right.
It's my business coach. It's my business advisor. It's my husband. And maybe, you know, my best friend. But even then, because was my business partner, I had to put that boundary up. Like now I do not talk about Hustle and Socialize with her. She might ask and I'll share, but it's that boundary of, hey, you're not with the company anymore. So I feel like, yes, I'll share some things, but you don't need to know everything that's going on because you've made that choice to leave the company. Right. So I feel like I really had to understand that and also recognize, and I've had a client actually tell me this in the middle of our onboarding call. She said, I've been watching you for a year. And so it was in those moments where it's like, okay, the people are watching.
Yeah.
So, and sometimes it's like, well, you kind of go, well, am I not being truthful? Because a lot of people are like, I want to see vulnerability. Sometimes it's very hard to be relatable.
Right.
I remember somebody had told me that, like, it's hard to relate to you because you're so successful and you don't share all this stuff. And it's like, no, I know when to share.
Yeah.
When it's in those moments that I can share. I'm not going to be saying, like, a lot of people would never have guessed it that I was struggling to get clients when I was at the height of winning awards, you know, like
that's an interesting duality.
Yeah. And it's those things, but it's like, yeah, those are the lessons I can share from that perspective. But when I was going through that moment where it's like, hey, I'm sitting around a desk, you know, fighting from my bank to get a line of credit when, you know, people are telling me you're killing it. And it's like, well, I'm trying to get this thing going, you know? And I think like, yes, I love to share that, but not in the moment because I'm still dealing with it.
Right.
100%.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So pivoting.
Yeah.
Oh, that's like, I feel like that's my word, right? It's like, I know how to pivot, but you have to, because
Any successful entrepreneur, I think, would say the same thing.
yeah, you have to. And social media is like that too. Social media changes every day.
Yeah.
Right? Like every single quarter is something different. What worked like a month ago is not going to work now. And so I feel like even on the social media side, that has taught me like, all right, let's pivot. But yeah, it's been a complete journey. And I'll just let you know that after I left that contract, 1 full year later, I made back even more.
There it is.
That's right.
So I knew that was a great decision.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Well, that goes to, learning how to trust yourself, learning how to listen to your intuition and these kind of messages that were being whispered.
Yeah.
Because I've read a lot. It's like these intuitive callings or things that we need to respond to aren't loud, they're soft. But we have to have that connection to them in order to let them guide us.
Right.
That's super interesting. And then, kind of talking about the future.
Yeah.
And bringing it around to, I know, like Hustle and Socialize's future, Social Butterfly Gal's future. What is on the horizon that you can share? Or what is also, kind of your thoughts on, you talk a lot about the future generations. Your work, impact, legacy. What is driving you in that regard?
What drives me is my future kids. What drives me is also my past women in my lineage that never got to have a life, but they never got to have these opportunities. I also think about who I was when I was a kid growing up in the Valley and finding CEOs that never look like me. And now I get to be one of them and I get to, be in that aspect. I feel that those are things that I'm picking up on to where I still want to have this passion where we're kicking down every single door and we're raising that glass ceiling to where so many people are being seen and heard in a way that is, yes, we're scratching surfaces, but there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. And I feel like one of the things I've always said this about Hustle and Socialize, and I'm going to continue to preach it. When people think of women entrepreneurship, when they think of small business for women, I want them to think of San Antonio.
Yes.
I want them to be like, this is the place where I need to move my companies to. And this is the place where I need to get tapped into the market. And this is where I need to be. And Hopefully Hustle and Socialize will be at the convention center. I've heard that I could do it, next year even, right? Like it's those things. But ultimately, I just feel like for me, what drives me is like, what is going to be that legacy? Like when I get to the place where I'm no longer here and there's pictures of me at that slideshow, at that memorial, what are those gonna say about me? Like, what's that life that I'm living now in of every era, right? Like, we're all gonna live so many eras,
right?
But I feel like that's what I see. And, it's interesting because I know that social media can be just so fickle. There's, we don't own social media, so we're at the mercy of all these platforms. But I think still the basics of marketing and just putting yourself out there, those stay the same. Those foundations stay the same. And I do feel that media is changing. Our ownership of media is changing. And I do feel like that's something I also want to think about is like, what type of media am I creating and where is it being housed and who's got access to that? And so it's really interesting, but I do feel like this is where I'm meant to be. And I really cannot wait to see, like, I want to continue to do more public speaking. I want to write a book at some point in time. And I just feel like it's going to continue to grow. And as I continue to learn and, shift and pivot and hopefully become a mom and do all these things that my vision is like, I can't wait to see these little hustlers just sitting in the front row watching, like, it's possible for them. Like, that's really what I look forward to.
Yeah. That's amazing. Well, I know we could keep going. I think we're running out of time here in the amazing Studio O at the Pearl, and Adrian and his awesome setup here. And speaking of entrepreneurs that know how to pivot and continue to make things happen at a high level, he's certainly one of those people, and we appreciate the use of his Studio O, but
and his vision.
But thank you so much for joining us. Where can people find you on the internet? I'm sure that there are many places.
Yes. Number one, Instagram.
Yes.
Follow me at The Social Butterfly Gal and at Hustle and Socialize. LinkedIn, TikTok, Facebook. I'm on all the platforms. But Social Butterfly Gal on Instagram is where you can find me.
Cool. And we're at happy.notsatisfied.
Yep.
Yeah. And any parting words, Miss Ellie?
No, just we're so thankful that you came to share your story. And we are also on a mission to, through this podcast, as a local studio that, Studio O, Adrian, and telling local stories to help elevate that vision and that image of San Antonio, because so many people are working to start, to build the legacy that, like, we didn't have growing up here as kids, especially as creatives. So support creative industry and rate and review Happy Not Satisfied so that we can keep doing this. And if you have another great guest or story, send it our way. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching.
Sure. Thanks.